Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be showing you how I made these Darkwing Duck inspired Mickey ears. I did make these for Year of the Ear a few months back, and I'm finally getting out to posting the tutorial. I really loved how these turned out, and my favorite thing about these ears is the fact that they do glow in the dark, which was a really fun feature to add to them. So if you're interested in how I made them, then just keep watching. For fabric, I already had this purple shimmery fabric on hand from, I believe, the Esmeralda ears that I had made a couple years back. And so I'm taking what I already had on hand and I'm just tracing, I'm not even tracing actually, I'm just cutting around the ear cutting line template that I have linked down below for you guys. The reason I'm not tracing onto this fabric is because it is so dark and I don't have a silver Sharpie at the moment, which is what I would normally use to trace. And I am only tracing out and cutting out two of these because one side is going to be purple on this set and one side is going to be black. So again, I just went ahead and cut out two. I didn't trace it. I just cut it because I had nothing that would show up on this fabric. But they don't need to be perfect because I went ahead and just overcut the line a little bit. That way, if I made any mistakes, it would be totally fine. And then for the next layer, I'm going to be using that same cutting line template and I'm going to be tracing two of these onto a sheet of purple felt, and then I'll be cutting two of those out. Now I am going to tell you guys, you don't really have to specifically use purple felt or black felt that you're going to see me using here. I usually use felt that matches the fabric that I'm using, but when you're using really dark fabric, it honestly doesn't matter because it's not really going to show through the fabric anyway, so probably any felt that you have on hand is going to work, but I would just test it with the fabric, just kind of put it behind your fabric and see if it shows through, and if it doesn't, then use what you have on hand and save a little money. But once this was done, I had two purple felt ears cut out and two black felt ears cut out. After that, I'm going to be taking the smallest template, which is labeled the foam and batting template, but it's also the cardboard template. And I'm going to be needing to trace 4 of these and cutting these out using an X-Acto knife. I'm only going to show 1 on camera, but you do need 4 of them. Now I am very waist not want not, and this is an old skirt of my daughter's that no longer fits her, and so I've been keeping it for fabric, and so I am going to be cutting the other side of the ears out of this fabric. So I'm using that same ear cutting line template, the largest one, and using what is left of my silver Sharpie to trace this ear cutting line. I actually cut this fabric first, and this is how I learned that my silver Sharpie had basically had it. And I wasn't going to be able to use it on the purple fabric. But after tracing it, I went ahead and cut this out. I did cut these out using scissors because, as you can see, this is a skirt, and so I wasn't able to easily use my rotary blade unless I just cut the skirt open, which is definitely an option. But you could also go buy fabric if you don't happen to have a pleather looking skirt on hand that you're cutting up for a set of ears. Just depends on your situation, I guess. Once I had all of my fabric layers all cut out, then I'm going to start assembling ears. So taking a cardboard piece and a purple felt piece, I'm going to begin with hot glue by putting a thin line of hot glue at the top of the cardboard and then folding over the felt and tapping it down into the hot glue. And then I'm going to continue this method down the sides of the cardboard. The reason for the felt is because it gives it a nice fullness underneath the fabric and protects the cardboard. That way, if your ears ever like get a little bit wet or something like that, they definitely won't fall apart. Now, if they get torrentially downpoured on or fall in a swimming pool, I'm promising nothing. But this does definitely give them some nice sturdiness, and it also makes them have a really nice finished look. After that felt has been attached, I don't usually close up the bottom until I do this part. So next I'm attaching the fabric, and I'm going to do the same thing, applying a thin line of hot glue at the top. I'm going to fold over the fabric and tap it down, and then I continue down the sides of the fabric, folding it over and tapping it down into the glue. And then once we get down to the bottom, I will fold the fabric and felt up together. But I do like to take my scissors and snip the fabric on the bottom. This will help prevent any kind of puckering or weird folds in the fabric. It just makes it, again, have like a really nice finished look. So folding one side over at a time, I'm going to tap it down into that hot glue. And sometimes you do have to hold it down for a minute. It just depends how hot your hot glue is. And then this little silicone finger cover, you guys can pick those up at Dollar Tree if you're curious. So the next step is going to be adding the heat transfer vinyl for the glow in the dark portion of the ear. I didn't show actually making this on my Silhouette because my computer that runs my Silhouette is far too old to screen record anything. But just so you guys know, I literally just Googled Darkwing Duck Silhouette and it was one of the first images that popped up. And then I used the tracing tool on my Silhouette software to trace it, and then I just mirror imaged it and cut it out on my Silhouette. I did already have glow in the dark heat transfer vinyl on hand. I will link below the glow in the dark heat transfer vinyl that I use. It is so incredibly bright. Like, oh my gosh, it is insane how much it glows in the dark. And then this heat transfer vinyl attached to this faux leather so well, like a dream. I was so happy with it. I was a little bit nervous peeling it off, so I did do a cool peel, and I just peeled it off and it came off so nicely. I was so happy. But yeah, if you guys look here, like none of the little skinny pieces came off or anything, nothing like overcooked. The transfer tape did leave a line, but after a couple hours that did go away. So I was very, very happy about this. Now that we have the heat transfer vinyl applied, I'm going to start assembling the black side of the ears. So starting with the cardboard and the black felt, I'm going to repeat the exact same steps that we did on the purple side. The only difference for this side is that once you get to the fabric, you do want to make sure that you have your image lined up the way that you want it. So just be careful that once you lay it face down, that, you know, you're making sure that you have enough space on your edges and stuff like that, to where you can fold the fabric over and it's not going to move your image to a place that you don't want it on the ear. Once you've completed the front half, you'll repeat those steps to create the back half, and then you'll attach the two by applying a pretty good amount of hot glue to the center of the ear like I am here. And then you will take the front half and just firmly press it down onto the back half and really push down, like apply a good amount of pressure here. And then you're going to want to hold it down until you feel that ear cool off, because that's how you know that the glue has fully set and dry and your ear is ready to go. Now I'm going to set that aside and start working on the purple side. So I wanted to create the little like lapel collar thing on his coat, and I thought that the easiest way to do this would be to use some purple ribbon. So this is going to contrast a little bit with the purple fabric that I was already using. Again, I did have this ribbon in my craft room already. So if you're buying fabric, then maybe just go ahead and use the same fabric just to save money, unless you're like me and you just have tons of stuff in your craft room. But I used paper to create a template. So I just pulled out some cardstock, and I just cut a little template to see how it looked on the ear. And then using this, again, this purple ribbon that I had on hand, I'm just going to cut a little portion of it and then trace out my little paper template that I made as best I can. And then I'm going to cut that out. Now, something I will suggest when doing this is to oversize it. So if you think you made it like exactly perfect, it's too small. And I will show you why in a minute. But if you're doing the ribbon method, in a second, we're going to use a lighter to sear the edges of the ribbon to make sure that it doesn't fray. And that is going to shrink down your ribbon a little bit. And when you're working with something so small, every kind of like centimeter, millimeter kind of measurement counts. So I definitely would suggest oversizing it just a tiny bit, because if you guys just saw there, I'm using the lighter, and if you get too close, it is going to kind of like cook your edges. So definitely be careful when doing this. But this was so easy, like creating the little paper template and tracing it out and then just cutting it out of the ribbon. Like it didn't take long at all. And the ribbon was really nice because you can just use the lighter to hem the edges, and now you have this little piece that's not going to fray, and you can do this really cute little detail on the ear. And I also did like that it didn't exactly match the fabric that was already on the ear, because it made it a little bit easier to see it. For the buttons on the coat, I found these at Hobby Lobby. They were super inexpensive, and I believe they were 40% off when I got them, so really, really inexpensive, and I only needed 4 of them, so I actually have 2 left. Now, obviously, if you know how to sew, you could definitely sew these on, but I am lazy and I'm just going to be hot gluing them. So I did take these little wire snippers and I'm just snipping off the back so that they can lay a little bit flatter. They are just plastic buttons, so this wasn't very hard to do. And then after I get the backs all snipped off, then I'm just going to apply some hot glue and hot glue them down. I did notice at this point that one of the buttons I glued down wasn't lining up correctly, so I did peel it off, and then I peeled off the hot glue, and then I just glued it back in place as cleanly as I could, but it was just really, really bugging me that it was not placed correctly, so being honest and showing you guys that. After I fixed that, then I'm going to go ahead and attach the two halves of the purple ears, so applying a pretty good amount of hot glue to the center of the ear, which you can see me doing here. Then I'm going to firmly press down the two purple halves together, and I'm going to allow that glue to fully cool off and allow those two halves to attach to each other. After much debate about the trim, I decided to go with this gold rope trim that I had on hand, and with this trim it can be really difficult. You can sear the edges like I'm doing here, but it can still unravel even then, so you do have to work kind of quickly with this kind of trim. So you are going to see me moving very quickly, but it doesn't unravel once you get it glued down. You just have to get it glued down before it does. So you'll see me applying a line of hot glue on the rim of the ear, and then you're going to see me just pull that rope into where I've laid the glue. I do like this type of trim because it fills in that little crack between the two halves of the ears so nicely, and it just looks so good. And then I went ahead and measured out to the end of the rope and cut off the excess so that I could just do this all in one fail swoop. If you've never done trim before though, I would suggest taking your time just a little bit more and working in smaller segments as you lay down the glue and then cutting off the excess at the very end. I decided to take some gray craft foam that I had and just trace out his little hat. His hat is a pretty simplistic shape, thank goodness, and just using a pencil, I just kind of pulled up an image on my phone and sketched it out, and then using an X-Acto knife, I cut it out, and that is that. It was pretty simple. I think even if you are not an artist, you could definitely do this. And then I just used a Sharpie for this little portion of the hat, and I was done. For the bow, I'm going to be using this faux fur ribbon from Hobby Lobby. This is $7.99, so I would definitely wait for it to be half off to pick it up. And I'm just cutting a strip of it. I don't even know how long this strip was. I'm so sorry, guys. It's probably about 8 inches long. And then I am applying a line of hot glue to one end of it and then folding over the edge and tapping it down into the glue. This is the easiest way to make a bow, is by using wired ribbon, especially because it keeps that really nice bow shape. And you don't have to do much. But I liked the fluffy quality of it because, you know, Darkwing Duck is a duck, and this kind of has that duck feather quality to it. And then for the center of the bow, I'm adding just a little bit of ribbon. I did decide just to use that same purple ribbon that we used before, but I am going to kind of fold it over on itself because it's a little bit too thick, and then using my lighter just to sear the edges to make sure that it doesn't fray. And then I just folded over that ribbon to try to keep it a little bit thinner than it naturally is. Using my hot glue gun, I tapped it down into a dot of hot glue on the bottom of the bow and then wrapped it all the way around the bow. And obviously this ribbon is a little bit too long, so you can either double wrap it like I am here, or you can cut off the excess and then glue it down. Sometimes I like to double wrap it just because it reinforces the bow a little bit. And then adding a dot of hot glue, I tap down the other end of the ribbon, and the bow is pretty much done at this point. So now we can start to assemble everything onto the headband. This part is super easy. I'm going to be using my ear spacing template. I do have this linked down below for you guys. I use this pretty much every time I make ears because I like to get the spacing right. And I just line up the headband and the ears, and then grab the first ear, apply some hot glue to the bottom of the ear, and then I'm going to firmly press it down onto the headband. I kind of change it up. Sometimes I put the ear in the very middle of the headband, sometimes I put it toward the back. It really just depends on the design. For this set, they're more toward the middle of the headband because the bow isn't very big. And then you can see me here, I'm just holding that ear for a good long while because I really want to make sure that I'm allowing that glue to fully dry. And then I'm going to repeat that step on the other side, applying a good amount of hot glue, but not too much because I don't want the glue to ooze out all over the headband and create a mess. And then I'm going to firmly hold it down onto the other side of the headband. If this is your first time making ears, I do highly suggest using just a little marker or something to mark where the ears go. It does help with kind of the nervousness of where to place them exactly on the headband the first time that you do it, or even the first 20 times you do it. And then once I had my ears on, I am going to go in and add a little bit more security. The black side of the ear was having some trouble fully adhering, and I think it's because of the type of fabric. That like slippery kind of leathery type of fabric does not glue down super well. So I'm adding a little bit of extra gold rope trim just to really reinforce these ears. And that's kind of a good tip. If you ever feel like your ear is not adhering very well to the headband, a little bit of trim on the bottom can definitely help with that security. But it also can depend on your design because sometimes you don't want that trim on the bottom. So I don't always count on this, but for this particular design, I did like how it looked, so it just kind of worked out. So just applying a thin line of hot glue around the bottom of the ear, I'm just adding some more of that rope trim. And then I decided to do it to the other side as well, just to make sure that they looked nice and symmetrical. I did want to show these ears at this point because I definitely feel like this is a set of ears that didn't need a bow. These look really awesome, and I definitely could see maybe making a set of these for like your husband or yourself or anybody and not necessarily wanting the bow. So just showing them without it. And next I'm going to go to adding the bow because I did decide to add the bow. And I just added a dot of hot glue to the bottom of the bow and then use these little clamps to hold it in place while it dried. And next I'll be gluing on the hat with just a dot of hot glue to the center of the bow. And that is the final step on these ears. This is how they turned out, and I think they look so cool. I love Darkwing Duck. It's such a like memory from my childhood, and I love that I was able to make these glow in the dark. They were really fun to make, and I loved all the little details on them. You guys are going to have to let me know what is a Disney afternoon cartoon that you miss, and what is a set of ears that I need to make it next for a Disney afternoon cartoon. I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.